Thank you so much for having me. Today I'm going to tell a little bit more on how we used AI opportunities in content development. We're a small audience, so feel free to ask me questions also about Storytel. I worked in video entertainment my entire life. Before 8 years ago, I made the transfer to audiobooks. Very much loved the format. Also in the streaming audience. Before here, I worked for HBO, Paramount, Universal. So my experience was a lot in video, but it's translatable, I think, to a lot we do in the streaming services within audiobooks. I live in Amsterdam for children. My son is here to support me. I'm visiting Athens as well, learning a little bit more about my job, and also a little bit more on Storytel. I think most of you possibly know it, but I think it's good to get a little bit of the background, also where we create projects and do project developments. Storytel was founded in 2005, and it's one of the largest players. We're particularly large in areas in Europe where Audible is not a dominant player. The markets are there quite differently, so we're very big in the Scandinavian markets and parts of Europe. In other markets, expansion markets we call it, we get traction somewhere, but it's quite fierce when it's coming, and also to the business model. I mean, the Swedish model that you just saw in the presentation doesn't work in every other market in exactly the same way. We want to move the world through story. These are the markets we are predominantly active in, but we're largest in the Nordic markets and in the regions, especially Turkey, Poland, Netherlands, and Bulgaria. We're quite big. Italy as well. But Italy is also an Audible market. And here you can see in markets where Audible is really big, like in UK, France, and Germany. They are predominantly present there in those markets.
Could you please go back
of
to
course.
the slide? In the markets where Audible is big, you are not the number one player, but you are in a good position. Or can you? I just know from Italy.
Yeah.
In Spain, but maybe you can.
Yes, we can see, especially also because we also are present with audiobooks.com, and I know there that in the audiobook market, this is excluding Spotify, which I don't have the latest data on, but maybe you know more. I think it's like 90% Audible, and we are a smaller player in that market, but also in larger markets. Now, Audible is huge, especially where the Amazon platform is a big presence as an e-tailer. So they have big support from that. But I don't know. I don't have the exact data in all the markets and how big. But I think that we have a very good proposition as an Audible competitor, and also because we have the exclusive content and we develop a lot. So we're quite in the forefront, I think, of audio development.
So you say
audiobook
when
development.
Audible is big, then sometimes publishers have a problem that you are streaming, even though it's a good streaming in terms of revenues with that fixed price?
Yes, of course. We all know the situation, of course, with Penguin Random House, who was not present in streaming for a long time, and they have like a huge market share, and especially in Western-oriented markets, where it's also translated books. So then also the translation of the Penguin Random House titles are difficult. But I think it's all moving, also because the business models are moving. In the past, we were unlimited only, but we are also experimenting with different business models to accommodate also the different demands, the different way of using. So I think that all the players are adapting to have maximum reach and reach maximum audiences and get hold of the maximum amount of content publishers are producing. Snapshot, we publish a lot. And we release a lot. These are not all our own books, of course. These are also books of all the other publishing parties in the market. Ebooks, quite big. We're known for audiobooks, but we also publish lots of ebooks in our service. And we are reaching 2.4 million subscribers, all paying subscribers. So I think what you showed in the monetizing model, I think the streaming book industry is monetized quite well in the markets we are now very successful in. In other markets, and that's interesting, I think also in markets like India, Brazil, etc., I think we need to be more flexible also. But we are working on that in the future. We own, and this is also interesting, what we do in the landscape. We also go more traditional, so to speak, although all these publishers obviously are also digitalizing, but we also own publishing houses in one of the major markets we're present at. But we also publish ourselves. So we Storyside is the wholly owned internal publishing house of Storytel, and what we produce there is either exclusively windowed. It's also Storytel original content, what we are producing in many of the languages in the countries and the markets that we're present in. This is also, I'm going to deep dive into, because I got the request, what are we doing with AI when it's coming to audio? I think it's a really interesting market, and to explain everything that we do within Storytel, I'm using this as a case example, New Horizon. This is a story that we have developed from the very early thoughts and ideas way to distribution and marketing. This is not necessarily a success case. We really see it as a learning case, what it can do, what are its limitations and what not, because as an original producer, I think we need to know what's going on, what can be done. AI most likely will be very present and already is present in most of our daily lives, but also when it's coming to publishing, audio recordings, story creation, etc. And I just wanted to get you together with me through the learnings that we have encountered creating this process. Starting with, why do we want to do this? It was actually our CEO that was like, how can't we create like an AI product, like right from the start? And we picked up, it's usually coming with it, I don't know. But I mean, it was a good challenge. And we thought as a content creating department within Storyside, what can we do to actually bring this to life and have like no limitations whatsoever? Because we communicated from the start, it's AI all the way. We're not doing it to make a big difference in the world. It's really making a big difference in the learnings within our team. So what can it do? We all got courses and everything, and how do we work with the different systems? But mostly also we wanted to be as original publishing creator. What can we do? And also utilize AI and embrace it more in the ways what we can do to make the distribution of audio even bigger. This is a little bit of an overview. It became an anthology series. We were very much focused on the younger target demo because they're a little bit more adopting when it's coming to new audiobook formats. We created in the English language. This is not our core market, but this is the language that we all communicated as a team, but it's also the language, and the audio is farthest developed in English. So it was easiest to start there. It's not where we wanted to end up. We also are doing the translations with AI, publishing it, but I will go through the steps and the different learnings we had in those steps. First learning, it takes a whole lot of people creating 2 hours of audio. And this is just on the storyline development and creation. I think the nice part is that we brought together quite an international team. We have touched upon it now many times. Audio is so local. The language is local in 70-80% of the cases. Differs a little bit per market, of course. People are listening to their own mother tongue. People enjoy listening to their own language the most. But it's interesting to see how can we connect all of that together. And it's quite an international team, and it was actually Arnor, because it ended up when you're briefing and prompting the system, it's better to have like one main prompter. It's nice to come up with this, and people help with editing, etc. But it was actually Arnor from Iceland who ended up being the main prompter and creating the storyline. So this was a good learning. You can work with a whole lot of people, but in the end it's usually the one author. And it was also, how do you brief the system? Oh, before I forget, this is only the creation team, but also marketing was included, both global and local. Communication, legal, of course. What can we do? What can't we do? When it's coming also, I mean, we worked under the impression we have no IP for whatever we create because everything is done. But obviously we were also briefed, like, how do we prompt correctly? So we never said make something like Lucinda Riley or Harry Potter. So never refer or prompt into any existing content or any existing text. So really start from scratch and from our own ideas as employees. tech included. We need access to the systems. How do you go in there? And how does the system even work? How do you create a cover? We have a separate production team, EarSelect, that's named. It's owned by Storytel, but it's producing for many publishers worldwide. And they are helping with the translation. What we know within audio when it's coming to scripted formats, and probably it's the same anywhere, is how do you translate very unique concepts in your own language into other languages? And this can be also quite costly. What can, in the future, AI do more and more for us to make that transfer cheaper? Narration, obviously, I'm also going to let you listen to some voices that we selected and how did that work. And even music creation. We did everything with AI for this title. Also, some of the images I'm using, this is not to promote, but it's also for IP rights, is created by Monks. We had an agency that worked from scratch, also on AI, creating all the images and all the marketing campaigns.
Question, sorry.
Yes.
Can you tell us why it ended up being just one person doing the prompting?
Because it's twofold. One fold is it's difficult working in one system with multiple people working all over the globe. You have to call in and be there. AI now is very well fit for one person going in there and interacting with the system. And the second thing is that to get like a consistent storyline, because that was one of the main learnings a little bit. Having a consistent storyline in AI, this is the most difficult part. And having then 5 people. And maybe it's a little bit the same, because what we also did was we started by creating a persona for the AI, which we could handle more or less like a debutante, Rosie. We had to give her a background, a rationale. And in the end, I think also for most of the authors, you rather work like by the single person controlling the storyline. And this was for combining. She needed to have a global appeal to the target audience. We have picked age set, but also what she's going to work, what's her background, and she was located in London.
Can you tell something about the product? So is it, there was 1.5 hours, that's just one episode, is it a season?
We will come back. I have more slides because this is the starting point of the author, but I will also go, because this was also interesting to what was our starting point, what we wanted to do, and where we ended up.
Okay, and you will tell us the starting point later.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. This was, the starting point was creating a persona, actually creating the story. So Arna could kind of like be her and being her editor, like you would have like in a traditional publisher. Maybe also when you're an author and your editor is really guiding you through the process. We had a similar setup in creating this. Rosie-led, it's an anagram of Storytel. Everything we publish is, which actually AI was not very good at doing. I mean, AI was mixing it up, hallucinating. I mean, it can create, like in a split second, an entire translation and an entire storyline, but having a good anagram. So it was also interesting finding out. But obviously things are moving at light speed. So what it could not do, like making a simple dot in Midjourney, was like making art all the time. It's already doing, so it's learning so incredibly fast. But Rosie led, and it was published to everyone to make sure this is AI. We just want to have your opinion on it. We're creating it for that. It was never the intention, what a lot of authors are afraid of, and narrators as well, for replacement. It's really just finding out what it can do and how it can help us in our daily work. Love in an AI world. I don't know why I did that.
Did the cable come out?
No, I didn't touch it. Maybe I could. No. Put it in and out. Maybe that's the good thing. No signal. No, it's back on.
Henriette, it's okay.
In and out.
was Rosie.
Indeed. You're insulting me. Debutante. I'm a arrived star already. I just put it in and out, but
okay.
it's so it should be
Okay.
it should be fine. Very much young adult title. AI also brings some fun stuff, and that is that you can actually place your author in the worlds and have some world building. So it's also a great fun, sparking creativity. We had the author, the debutantes, we had kind of like the setting, the target audience, what we wanted to do. So we also needed to have a world setting. If you ask AI on storytelling, it's sci-fi it loves doing. And connecting human and AI, I mean, so the world setting was quite easily a future world where love is explored between AI and humanity. Lots of the scenes you can actually translate now into images. I mean, this is not used in audio, obviously, but it's used in promoting the title in the app that we have, and also promoting it outside in social media, for instance. This is something that the agency did, and to just bring the world of Rosie to life, of New Horizon. All AI created, by the way. Yes, this was your question. Yes. We started out, I mean, in the picture perfect world, correct? I mean, in a streaming service where you're being calculated on the titles and the hours you place, how great would it be that you would have like free translation, and have like 30-hour books created, which is obviously really, really expensive. What we immediately found out is having one brilliant, captivating book of 10 hours was impossible. It hallucinated all the ways around. It filled in gaps. It was prejudice, and if it was not prejudice, you tried to correct it. I mean, all the relationships were were completely diverse. It was really difficult tracking it down into a consistent storyline and a plot line, particularly for audio, which is very important to have to be there and be gripped and to be taken. Because many people do other things during audio, so a strong plot line is important. Or a very thin plot line, where it really doesn't matter. I mean, format, writing, etc. is also usually working very well for audio reasons. So that's not where we ended up. I mean, the brilliant one book, 10 hours, everything for free. I mean, that was easily out of the window. And we ended up quite fast in having shorter stories. And having it connected through music, through the main characters. But even then, I mean, we had to continuously simplify it. Because when you listen to it in audio, it was hardly ever really, really good. And not to give a big takeaway, but I mean, even this was like really scraping it by and having something that we thought that was more or less acceptable. And this is really coming down to the storyline, correct? What it can do well is brainstorm with you. So whenever you have it set and you have everything done, like what is the main characters? What are the motivation? It's you can sometimes work well with the AI to get like ideas and take it from there. So originate creativity is really difficult, but having like main characters or prompting the system, what does she look like? You have to be very, and that's also what we got training in. How do you prompt the system? What you put in there and what does it give back? But then you got some nice like lead characters. This is only for one story, of course. One of the shorter stories called Eva. But also what are the other characters that she's working with. And Eva, the AI, I mean, what does it look like? How does it operate to get like the short stories? This is also created by the AI itself. But it was nice also because then we could also bring it to the next step. I mean, if we have the lead characters, this is the case for Eva. This is the narrator of the books, of the stories that she's present in. But it's also finding a voice for Rosie herself, because she was present in social media and she needed to have a voice. It's interesting because we were experimenting, obviously, with digital-only voices, which is only AI derived, but we see that's not working yet in larger audio narration. A little bit like listening to your TomTom system. It's very short. So what we are using now within Storytel, and I give you a voice demo as well later on, is clones. This is really interesting to have. These are people because they are consciously allowing you to use their voice. They're fairly being paid. They're mentioned. They're credited. And this is also what we use to find the voices in here. So we went through many voices. Storytel has a batch of own voices, which we can choose from. But Rosie was a little bit more difficult because you don't want to typecast, you don't want to. So we actually found a London-based Chinese female of this age, and she was used. I'm first gonna let you listen to the.
Hi, I'm Rosie Letts, and I'm super excited to be working with Storytel on my debut story collection, New Horizon. The stories are really close to my heart. I think my inspiration stems from my multicultural upbringing and the experiences I had growing up in London. My parents moved to the UK when they were in their early 20s, hoping to build a better life for our family, and I was born in London a few years after they settled here. Growing up, we faced economic hardships, and there were times where
What happens is that we record around 2 or 3 hours of content of a particular voice within our production studios. And after that, we can have, because the text then we write ourselves. So what you hear her explaining is nothing that she actually read in herself. So we record the voice and we play it out into the system. What's also interesting but I will show you later on. First, I'm going to let you hear a little bit about Ava. And this is actually then the audiobook and also some of the music that was placed online.
Part 1. Ava. I woke up, as I had every day for the past 2,461 days, when my sensors detected sunlight filtering through the window blinds. My internal systems initialized smoothly, and I was ready to assist Riley in their daily routine. It was a regular morning. Riley greeted me with a sleepy smile as they shuffled into the kitchen for their usual cup of coffee before they went into the lab. "Good morning," I said, my voice gently radiating through the ambience. Part 1.
Sorry, I will go.
Hi,
Ava.
Sorry, I thought it was also including the beginning tune. I'm sorry, that's not in here. But this is the actual voice that we have. And what's interesting, we have launched Voice Switcher some time ago within the Storytel app. And this was mainly done because one of the many things that you hear when people are like, I'm not interested in the book, I don't like this book, is because they don't like the voice. Especially when it's coming because it's so close to your ear, it can be annoying. So then we thought, what can we do to find an alternatives? Because, people prefer actual voices still, but what can we do without having to have multiple narrations in place? So we actually had the Voice Switcher. And if I'm not mistaken, all the voices in the Voice Switcher are derived from Storytel employees. So we had kind of like an election and a selection, and people with the best voices, or what was considered to be the best voices, with a little bit also diverse background, translated. And the interesting part in this is, because the English voice, so you're going to listen to it in English, but the people having their voices lent to these characters are actually mostly Swedish. But having the voice in place, but you can have like the basic language model in AI available, in this case for English. And the most interesting part is that you start like, oh my God, this is awful. This is exactly the example I want to show you when the actual voice might not be the voice best to you.
One day, I'll make a call to Gripe, who'll then contact me, another me, because I
need to go to Dalarna? How does that work? There can't be 2 of me, can there? Monty shook her head. There aren't 2 of you, just one. It just appears that way.
Appears that way due to the time dilation that occurred when we flew through the wormhole. Henry stared inquiringly at Monty. We've known
about time dilation since the first manned space flights. When the astronauts returned from having spent some time on a space station, they've actually aged less than the rest of us on Earth due to the fact that the speed at which they've orbited Earth is relative to the gravitational force.
It's really good.
Yes. I have a question.
Yes, sure.
I guess, obviously that becomes more expensive, though, doesn't it? Because you've got to pay the full actors or performers to do that. But I guess it works out because more people will listen to it knowing that they can change their voice to one that they don't find irritating.
Yeah, that is the assumption. I mean, people still prefer, like, usually having the actual voice, and we also see it in that the first voice is usually to listen to. We also had famous people, for instance, in Sweden, and then you also see that they can be really popular. I mean, but it's nice if you hear a short piece now. If you have to listen, I mean, an audiobook, and you're sitting in your car and you're listening to it for two or 3 hours. I mean, it's a difference then. Non-fiction and fiction, of course, can be a huge difference in when you listen to it and what you find pleasant still to hear. But I think it's interesting to see that the developments are going so fast. And I think when it's coming to spread out, I mean, you say that oral story delivery has been worldwide everywhere, but not everything is recorded in a high quality. Not everything is distributed worldwide. So I think when it's coming to localization and distribution, I think AI can be of great assistance. We established quite fast, I mean, having the original story. But I mean, I think the opportunities as well for democratization, I mean, even in India alone, there's so many languages. And maybe it's relatively inexpensive to record it. But if you want to have like a good monetization model as well, I think that it can be very helpful.
So your example was there's an original narrator?
Yes.
But you can choose to use
exactly.
Those, but there's also, is there also there must have been an ebook that just have those 4 AI narrators? No.
Not at this point.
Not at this point.
No.
Because then it would be absolutely great. But I have to say I like the excerpts. Really?
The excerpts is great.
I would choose them.
But this was also an example, of course, of a voice that might not be. But usually people stick, and this is also the example we used it as well, of course, for the other one. And we are trying to also see if people will also, when you only have an AI narration, for instance, for classics over 70 years old, to see, I mean, if we can bring them into many languages.
I should really know this, but these clones are reusable, all of them, right?
Yes.
The 4 ones.
Yes.
So once we've done the clone.
Yes. We can put them, and we can also use them for any language. I mean, obviously English is the farthest developed, but we've also launched Swedish, Finnish, Polish, Danish. Hopefully many languages will follow when the language model are good enough, so we can use them. And then you can automatically have these exact same voices talk in Swedish, Finnish, Dutch.
Is there some sort of user feedback option? So I presume
Yes.
like a human being is listening to all hours of all languages and all books on AI clones.
Yeah.
Can the user give that feedback and say and help you educate your AI model?
We're not. That's a very good idea. I think that we're not using it. I'm not working at the tech department, so there might be developments that I'm not even aware of currently. But we have a feedback function. I've also displayed some feedback functions and also star ratings. What's difficult is because people provide feedback in one, and it can be on the narrator, on the storyline, on the ending, or I mean that the app, collapsed at that moment. And but I mean, we do have that feedback function, and we look into it a lot.
I was just curious, are people actually listening to the end?
For this story specifically, not really. No, I think that people just want to test it and listen to it. And I mean, there might be some that really liked it. But what you see in audio, especially in crime, then the finishing rate, we're tracking that for all the titles, that you really see when there's a strong plot line and you really go into the characters. I mean, separate storylines, I mean, it's not the most. But it was also not intended in that way. It was more really to see, but no, it was not...
But sorry, just because if you just hear a voice like that for a few seconds, so it's very fascinating.
Yeah.
But I don't know about the rest of you, but I've heard quite a lot of these voices. You begin to detect them immediately, and then within about 15, 30 seconds or something like that, I get really tired of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just want to find something authentic. I don't know if you've had those experiences yet.
Very much so. It's like I said, it's good for short content, but I must also say we work with the Lemon Labs on this model for quite some time. And I must say, I think that we could go to like 20 or 30 minutes, which is, but also we must not underestimate at this point that we're not just putting it out there. I mean, the production department, they have to go through everything because a voice, an AI voice doesn't know beat up here, you know, or scream here. And what we usually do within every audiobook within Storytel is having usually professional narrators that have acting experience and know how to use their voice. So indeed, it will in the end sound similar. Yes?
How do you pay the narrator that you're going to clone for, I don't know how many stories, especially if you use them on Voice Switcher all the time afterwards? Like, what does a contract like that, what is it based on? Is it based on hours per unit, per stream, per minute, per how many people selected your voice within a story versus others? Like, how does that even work?
It differs, I think, because, I mean, if you're in a voice switcher, it's different. And these voices are based on the employees, which have a different background. But it can change. I don't know all the exact details of all the voices because that's going through production. But it differs. I mean, if you have a really big name and you're very known, you also pay for that. I can imagine it looks more like maybe an advertising, like if you do commercials based on how known your voice is or how known you are or how popular you are, but also how do you use it, on how many productions do you want to place it. So it's a different model indeed. Otherwise, I mean, the normal voice is paid per finished hour, usually.
Yes. And in terms of narrators, have you seen that more famous narrators are more liked than a good voice that's, you know, warm and authentic?
Very much so. We see very much that people favor human talent in all the aspects.
Versus not famous.
That differs per market a little bit because we see in some of the markets it's just that people need to just like the voice. It doesn't necessarily need to be famous. But also when it's coming to biographies, for instance, it's sometimes nice to have the person. But I think in the end we also see that some of the authors, think that they really like narrating their own book. But what we can see is that usually we ask them to do a voice demo. And when they go in, and they also know, reading, it's also really profession, narrating larger pieces of content. So then they can do maybe the prologue or something of the kind. But it really comes down because, if you don't like the voice, people will find another piece of content. And in AI, correct. So we're now also experimenting when you have the one option. But it needs to be seen, how the developments are over the years. We already see a big difference from the very start to now, what ends up. But it could also very well be, that people recognize it. And but I think it can be for certain products, maybe for nonfiction, or maybe for titles that otherwise are just too expensive to translate or to just distribute, that it can be very helpful with. But we're experimenting all along and following it closely when it will be better and better.
Do you see it as a replacement for voice actors or as a supplement?
I think a supplement, very much. And also for titles that otherwise would not be narrated, an option to have it. So then it would be,
One day.
Sorry. This is more on the marketing we did around it. We did not spend a lot of money. Also the agency liked experimenting with the different AI tools, just testing what it could do. And I think one of the biggest learnings we had, and I already mentioned it a little bit, that you could really place her in environments and let her have interviews. What would it look like, when an AI author would do a book launch? So having the persona Rosie created was very helpful in this aspect. She was also, as you can see, very recognizable as an AI. So we also not made really an attempt to make the replacement, but really it was right in your face for everyone. But bringing her to life was also nice. I mean, visualizing books. It's not for everything. I mean, I think the power of books usually is that, and audiobooks is that you use your imagination, correct? So this was also more to play around with than we actually intend. But we can use it, for instance, for book trailers, etc. I mean, promoting your books in the apps, then it's also very helpful that you can use AI a lot more, bringing your promotion, your synopsis, more or less, to life, to a larger audience. We had a live meet and greet with her attended. I mean, it wasn't huge. I mean, let's also put it. This was not, the entire world. It's just nice to see that she got traction. And it happened a little bit, the wow effect. I mean, for the first question, you're like, oh, this is really nice, and camera angles. But then after the second and the third, it's becoming, personality, I think, was not really there. Even if you built everything behind it, the answers got quite flat or one-dimensional. And I also have the learnings in the end. I think that's interesting also for now. She has an Instagram page, and I think it's nice to take a look at the trailer. They're also entirely AI created, and this is how you could, for instance, watch it on your phone.
Welcome to New Horizon, an AI experiment by Storytel, exploring creativity through new technology. For this project, AI author Rosie Lett was created. Join Rosie in New Horizon, a world where the boundaries between humanity and technology have blurred, and humans and AI coexist side by side. Welcome to...
Sorry. The press was actually quite positive, mainly in Sweden. Also because we didn't present it as like, hey, this is going to be a big success. This is how audio is going to look. I mean, the learnings we had was it clearly cannot replace human talent. And it was an interesting starting point, because then you start a discussion. I mean, what can it do? What do we see? What is interesting and what's not? So this was quite good. Now to the consumer responses. Because we follow and we track it and we look in all the languages. We have, it was mainly consumed in Swedish. Well, you can see the orders, Danish, English and Finnish, what we have had. And the scores were quite different. I mean, magical and interesting. This is like mind-blowing, something to think about, but also boring. Got a lot, because it's... and also like... I don't even understand, what I'm listening to. And the ratings were also quite different. The 3.8 is for the English version. I mean, this is maybe also a clear indication of the quality of the voices and what people experience. But when you especially look at Swedish, Danish and Finnish, it was really too. People really, really actually didn't like it that much. No. But this was also good to learn. I mean, knowing the appetite. I mean, there's lots of that all the young adult people listening to it, I mean, might be more known to it. But I also known for my own son and also my daughter that they recognized AI so immediately when it's coming to what they hear, what they see. So I think also the perception of people of AI is getting more integrated. And but as said, developments are going so incredibly fast. These are the tools that we used. This is more for cover and background. I did not include all the tools that, for instance, the agency or our production department more used. But what we see is that there are a number of large players. We experimented, but for instance, DeepSeek we did not use for this. We combined a lot storylines and we played around with it. And that was even. Rounding up, I mean, some of the learnings, humans are essential. You cannot say to AI, create me a nice story. I mean, it will go all over the place. It's inconsistent, story characters are over. What I said, I mean, it tends to go completely sci-fi, very soapy, traditional. And if you ask it, I mean, don't be so traditional. Everybody is gender diverse. It goes completely over the top. It was like completely Hallmark. Then we wanted to add some. This is especially in the longer story. Then we said like, okay, people are like sexual beings, and when it's respectful, then seriously every scene contains some erotic thing. And so it was when it came to a debutante. What we really see is that short form is better when it's coming to narration and acceptability of the voice, but also for the stories. I mean, a short story it can do, but as you see as well to the responses, I mean, it's nice as a testing case, but it's not really that people now say at this moment in our platform, like, this is what we want to have. I mean, we are a platform, people pay like 15 euros on average per month to listen to audiobooks, and they want to have quality in recording in the storyline. And quality is not necessarily literature. The quality is the package, that you like the story, that the quality of the recording is good, and the voices. Generic and overdoing. Well, learning how to prompt is quite key. I think that we all know. Whatever you put in, I mean, you really have to monitor it and prompt it and correct it yourself. This is to storytelling specifically. I'm not talking to other... finding the right tool, both for yourself. It can change per person, what you like best, what you like working best with. Test it around, combining tools, but also be open for change of tools. Well, tech help needed. In our case, we were creative people. But I mean, logging in, especially in different and going through different systems, logins, and also having some kind of like closed environment as far as it is possible in creating, because it's also Storytel content that we were creating. Safety, I for IP, like I said, don't brief it on write me the next Harry Potter, or at least not from IP and Storytel point of perspective. I think it's really nice experimenting with it as a consumer yourself with it. As said, it's going fast, but it's also what we thought it was. It was a lot of fun. I think working with AI can also be, who said it? I think it was a philosopher. I mean, I want AI to do my laundry, not to do my creative stuff. I mean, experimenting with it and, you know, oh, I want to have some background. Is let a back name, you know, used in London? And then, you know, it can bring up. You always have to check it. I mean, somebody of our tech department side is like, I think, like the smartest intern ever. I mean, I can tell it everything. It's hardworking, but I have to check everything and make really sure that my assignment is correct. I thought I was like, nice. I think that is what at best it also was to us. And yeah, an experimental phase. I think this is good. I think that if we're open to it and we can pick from it what is best, and even if you asked Rosie herself, this was her feedback. I mean, what do you think? I mean, working together, can AI create a story like this? And I think this was... it was really honest. Yeah. Yes, but it also tends to say what you want to hear. Yeah, exactly. So... yeah. Thank you. Do you have...
Right on time, actually, for lunch. Any final questions for Ruth on this? Yeah?
What was the costs of this experience?
Oh my God. I mean, sorry. Officially, I mean, none, because everybody did it. But if you put it in man hours and the amount of work everybody is putting in there, it's not efficient by far yet. But I mean, let's also say, I mean, our findings was like we want to use humans for story creation, but I'm quite sure many authors also use AI to reflect and maybe create some audio already. I think that there's so much in there. But I think the quality of human talent is unsurpassed at this moment, also in briefing AI.
But you had an agency.
Yes.
Just the media agency.
Yes, they were also experimenting with it. I mean, normally they would not do it, of course, like this. And in the marketing cost, they're not. But in the story creation, it was human hours, not necessarily out-of-pocket cost. Yes.
What was your CEO's response?
I think everybody just loved seeing it come to life, but also what it actually means. I think starting it, I think that everybody was like, oh, it's going to be, you know, maybe we are surprised, it's brilliant, and having some Marvel movie in mind, you know, but that did not happen. I think in the end, everybody was also a little bit relieved with the results. That, I mean, there's so much pending in the book world, I think, and maybe in podcasts everywhere, on human talent and ideas. I think that was also a relief.
So no jobs would be lost?
I don't think in our department, but I mean, I can never say. I mean, maybe in some of the narration parts, maybe in some of the other departments, but I don't know. I think for now I can only see it as additional. But who knows in 2 years' time, I mean.
You said you didn't want to ask for the new kept you back? Because I'm guessing, somebody will definitely ask that question.
And it might even end up on the platform. I think that probably also within Bookwire. I mean, how many titles do you lift and you are unable to check everything, for copyright, if it's other issues in the content. So I think that maybe even AI can also be used for that, to look for copyright infringements, to see. Because I mean, yes, we don't want to do it out of Storytel, but probably authors will do that.
Kind of larger question is, why are we doing all this? I know it's very shiny and new, but from a very honest business perspective, I guess the only point of doing this is where you can produce 100 books when you could produce one in the same cost. But the cost benefit question is, as a listener, I can listen to only one audiobook a month, and there are plenty for me to listen to my entire lifetime. So what are we doing this for?
I think, I mean, I would say it's the same as like invention, I don't know, of mobile. Of we want to know what it does. We want to be aware of what it can potentially also trigger or damage, but also can bring. I would not mind having my team experience and knowing, in the future how to translate maybe into more titles. But it's really, for us, it was knowing the system. That was our intention mainly.
For me, one huge positive is where there's a great storyteller, and say he's famous or not famous, but you can keep his or her voice for life. And maybe a family member, you can keep their voice.
Yes.
So these for me are the only real use cases.
Yes, no, this is true. Yeah.
There's actually a podcast project in Great Britain with Gary Lineker, who's already dead, the former soccer player, and he did a famous radio show interviewing famous people. So he actually founded a company which is led by his son nowadays, and they cloned his voice and will continue the podcast. And this is a really, really nice thing, to use AI, because they have just cloned his voice, and it seems, and it's funny, and it's a very, very nice podcast. It is somehow spooky, but the legend lives on, and this is a nice way to use it.
Yeah, it's also happened in Sweden, where a person of a famous kids franchise is not able to narrate himself anymore, and then they can do. But also people.
Gary Lineker's still alive.
Oh no, sorry, maybe I mixed up.
Gary Lineker was the shock, but he's still alive.
Yeah, sorry,
He doesn't
maybe
want to do the podcast.
I'm not into soccer. I will do this just a second.
Yeah, or dyslexic people, who cannot narrate themselves really well. I mean, there are interesting things that you can do.
Just one thing that always was in my mind. I think it's super hard to create something from scratch. Yes. And I haven't heard one good AI written story, not one. But I think for Lee Child and Jack Reacher, it could do a better job. If you ask for Jack Reacher number 29, I think AI can do a better job.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if you have like a format writing and you have like 4 seasons, and then the author doesn't want to continue anymore, what would happen if you would upload those 4, all with permission, of course, when it's coming to Storytel? What would happen then? And we did not test that yet. But I mean, those are all experiments that you can think about.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just found who it is. It's Sir Michael Parkinson.
Right.
Sorry. Yeah, Google for him.
I would like to ask you, if a story like this uploaded, the copyrights of the new story would be of Rosie or the agency that made it?
Our assumption in this project was particularly there's no IP. The one thing that we have is our protection on the app. So it's difficult to download it or anything of the kind. But for this specifically, but I think this is legally a tremendous, interesting question going forward. How do you recognize it, and is there even IP? I think on this story or on the imagery, what you create from Midjourney, there's none.
It's human touch. I mean, it's prompting and human touch.
Yeah, but I think this is.
The more human touch it is.
Yeah. Yeah, in this case, this was not an issue, but I know in all other projects that's a big question, I think, where everybody's looking into.
Well, thank you so much for a
sorry.
really interesting case.
Well, thank you.